Hello all Year 7s, welcome to another online lesson. Welcome to those students that got their work into me and their other teachers from last week. Just a little recap from last lesson then. Which section of the River Meaden is in Warsop? So that is actually the middle course, so well done to those students that did that and actually had a really good detailed description of why this was the middle course, so talking about the meandering of the river. So really good to those students that mentioned that, and also to those students that said why it perhaps couldn't have been other parts of the river. It couldn't have been the upper course because it was too narrow, for example. So well done. A quick starter then to recap from last lesson. Think about which key words would you use to label this diagram. Okay, just think of it in your head and you pause the video now and think about which keywords would be used to label A, B, C, D and E. Okay, so A is the source, that's where the river starts. We looked at that last lesson. B, that is the watershed, that is that imaginary line that divides up the drainage basins. C is the confluence where the two rivers meet. D is the tributary, and E was the mouth where it meets the sea. So a little recap again. You're going to work out which section of the river the images are on the next slide, just to try and jog your memory to work out which section of the river is being shown here. Okay, so if you're at home, just shout them out. Obviously I won't be able to hear you, but shout them out. Which section of the river is this? Well, to those students that said this is the middle course, fantastic. Next one. Brilliant, this is the upper course. And finally this one. Perfect, that was the lower course. So today we're going to look at which processes are taking place in the River Meaden. Now we've looked at which section of the River Meaden is in. We're going to look at what type of processes would typically occur in the River Meaden. So our lesson objective is to understand what erosion, transportation and deposition is. So you will be able to identify different processes of a river. You'll be able to describe different processes of a river, and if you're in the green, you'll be able to link these processes to the river profile. Now the river profile is what we've looked at, so the upper, middle and lower course of a river. That is the river profile. So what happens in a river? There are three main things that happen in a river. These three main things have an impact on what the river looks like, and today we're going to investigate these three things. So what are the three things happening in a river? Your task now on your sheet is to use the information to fill in the table. Now a challenge is to find out how these processes can make the river look different, such as how does deposition make an area look different. So you're using the information now to fill in that table. So pause the video and have a go at that task, please. Fantastic, you've had now some time to have a go at finishing that task. So you should have looked at the information about the three key words there, and you will now be in a great position to move on with the next part of this lesson. So what does ETD stand for in a river then? Think to yourself, 30 seconds, can you work out what ETD would stand for in a river? Okay, so ETD actually stands for erosion, transportation and deposition, some words that you've looked at in your sheet. Now just to help you work out what these actually mean. Now erosion is basically mean when you're destroying something. Okay. Now transportation is when it's moving, so it might be moving in the river. If you're transporting something, you might be in the car, but this in terms of rivers is something moving within that river. And deposition is dropping it off, so that's just depositing it. For example, pebbles or sand being deposited in the river. So which processes are taking place in the River Meaden? That's what we're looking at. Now we know now then that the processes are erosion, transportation and deposition. So then your task 2 now is to work out, based on the information that you've discovered about those three things, which processes or process are these examples of. So Niagara Falls in Canada, which process is this? Is it erosion, transportation or deposition? Pause the video on your task sheet and have a go at that. Okay, the next one on your sheet then is number 2. Which process is this an example of in the Mississippi River Delta, USA? Next one, number 3. Which process is this an example of? And finally, number 4, quite difficult, stretch yourself, see if you can have a go. Can you work out, based on the information in this diagram, which this is an example of a process? Which process is this an example of? This is a levee. Okay, which one is it? Pause the video and have a go now. Perfect. Okay, so here are the answers now. So number 1, the Niagara Falls, that was an example of erosion because that's eroding into a waterfall. Deposition, the river delta is depositing that sediment to create this beautiful river delta. Transportation, you can see these stones within the river being transported, being moved by the currents of the river. And finally, this little challenge one was deposition because it's depositing, just like at the delta, depositing sediment here. Now sediment, I'm meaning like pebbles, little bits of sand, things like that. It's being deposited on the river banks and that's creating a levee. So your final task of this lesson then is we're going to try and answer that question, which is describe and explain what processes take place in the River Meaden. Now your task is to name the 3 processes that occur in a river, which I think you will be able to do because we've looked at this throughout this lesson. Now if you're not sure, you need to go back in the video and have another look at the tasks. So you need to name the 3 processes. You then need to try and explain how the 3 main processes work. So you might need to use your worksheet to do that. And then finally mention which section of the river each process occurs in. So again, you'll have to use your sheet for that and try and work out, using the information you've learned from last lesson, talking about each section of the river and why these processes will occur in that section of the river. So try and aim for green. I want everybody to try and aim for green, which is actually linking the processes to the river profile, which is talking about the sections of the river. So try and see if you can have a go at that. Fantastic Year 7, have a great week. Thank you.